Oh, do we not have anybody yet?
Doesn't look like it yet.
Well, maybe I'm off the hook here.
That's, well, oh, hold on a second. I'm getting a text message. Okay, that's not, I wonder if we have more people. Oh, I see we have a person. We might have more people who are watching on YouTube.
We've got
Right.
someone in our waiting and watching participant panels, and we got a couple people watching on YouTube.
Oh, goodness. Okay, so lesson learned, don't watch the YouTube live stream while you're looking at Zoom. Doesn't turn out well. Oh my gosh. Yeah, I think we should wait a few more minutes. I would at least think Teresa and
Right.
other folks should be here, but
Right.
I'm
Yeah.
gonna mute myself and I'm gonna go check on the YouTube chat.
Sounds good. Yeah, and also just to think about that I hope nothing changed when we went to the webinar instead of the meeting. That didn't change info for people, did it? Okay, great.
No, nope, nope.
Okay.
All right, let me see. Okay, so it looks like we have a few people who are live streaming on YouTube.
Okay.
So yeah, I think we should probably just get started, and
Perfect.
And this will be recorded so people can catch it later if they weren't able to catch it this evening. So welcome everybody. My name is Emily, and I work with events at the Ann Arbor District Library. And we're very pleased as always to partner with MiTai, the Michigan Taiwanese American Organization, to bring great events to the library. And this event tonight is part of the 2021 Bunun Indigenous Festival. And you can find out more about that on our website at aadl.org/Bunun Festival, BUNUN Festival. Tonight, we're going to listen to Professor Joseph Gasho, who is professor of music and director of the Stearns Collection at the University of Michigan, talking about some traditional Bunun musical instruments. And I understand that there are also a couple of instruments that are going to be presented to the Stearns Collection. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to you, Professor Gasho.
Great. Thank you, Emily, for that introduction. I'm also really happy to be here and connecting with a new set of people about a really wonderful musical culture. This is certainly not my specialty. Traditionally at the University of Michigan, I'm a professor of harpsichord and I specialize in 17th and 18th century European music. But I've always had a great love and interest in a wide variety of musical styles, cultures. And as the director of the Stearns Collection, that's kind of a license to spend time researching and learning about a lot of different things. So that's been a great kind of addition to my work at the university. But again, that being said, the kind of presentation that I'm going to make today is certainly not one of primary scholarship. This isn't something that I have done kind of unique work on, but rather kind of my own secondary research following what others have done and talked about. And so that's my perspective on this. Also, in some contrast to the most famous studies into Bunun music, I'm going to focus on the instrumental parts of that. The Bunun are especially known for their community singing, which is polyphonic and very wonderful. And much has been said about that. There was a lecture yesterday and have been some other things about that. So I'm taking a different approach to speak about musical instruments. Here in the Stearns collection, we, until today, in fact, did not have any traditional or indigenous Taiwanese instruments, and certainly nothing from the Bunun tribe. But as Emily said, there actually won't be a live presentation during this webinar, but the presentation actually happened about 6 hours ago at the School of Music here at the university, and I do have some photos and some documents to share with you. So that actually seems like that might be a nice place to start. And as an introduction to that beginning, I'd like to especially thank Amy Situ, who is a friend of mine and a local champion of many good things and a fantastic organizer as well. And she reached out to me a few months ago about this project, this potential for a lecture and these instruments from the Bunun, and it just sounded like a great opportunity. So I'm really grateful to Amy Situ for making that introduction and involving the Stearns collection with this. And then also, of course, to Teresa Chung, who is the local leader of my Thai group, and her, again, her work is fantastic. So I'm going to go ahead first and screen share with you a photo that we took this afternoon at about 12:15, and it shows. Let's see, it shows to the far right there is Amy Cheng, who's a pianist faculty at the university, and then Mark Clegg. To my right, I think you can see me the most bald of all the people there in the middle. Teresa's next to me, and then two representatives from New York to the right. And they are holding the musical bow, which in Bunun is pronounced something like laduk. And then Teresa has what in English we would call a jaw harp, and this is probably pronounced Hong Kong in Bunun. And then I have a plaque that kind of commemorates this gift, and I'll show that to you in a little more detail, but this was the actual presentation earlier this afternoon. I'm coming to you actually live from the Stearns collection. We are located on the North Campus Research Center, which is even a bit on the northeast side of the North Campus of the University of Michigan. And you can see behind me, this is one of our main collections rooms. There is a bust of Frederick Stearns, who gave the initial gift of several thousand instruments to begin this collection over 100 years ago. And then there are some instruments laying out here that our manager, Ted Lotman, is working on. And so I have on a table here actually the instruments that were presented. So I'm going to show those to you quickly. This is the plaque. And I think you can see here, it discusses the gift and the celebration of kind of friendship between the people of Taiwan and the people of Michigan. And a photo there of some Bunun singers as well. So that was presented to the Stearns collection today. And then the smaller of the two instruments, this is the Hong Kong, or in English we would say the jaw harp, and I'll get as close as I can. The framing of this gift is also, this instrument is also in a kind of traditional Bunun style. I'll show you another one of these that is similar, not necessarily Bunun, that is in our collection a little bit later. And you'll also get a chance to hear video recordings of this instrument. I'm really indebted to Dr. Tseng Yufan from Taiwan, who has done a great amount of research on Bunun instruments and made a lot of wonderful recordings. So I'll play some of these later. And then this larger one here, this is the latuk, the musical bow, which is one of really the oldest musical instruments, not this particular one, but this style of kind of like a hunting bow, a stretched piece of wood with a piece of sinew or maybe silk, and in this case, metal that can be stretched to produce sounds. So again, you'll see this in live action in a few minutes, but this is the instrument that was presented to the Stearns collection today. At this time, I'd like to just speak briefly about kind of the outline of Bunun instruments and kind of in general what my talk will be. When I began this work, I wasn't sure how much information I would find. So I left things a little bit open-ended, and I'm going to actually spend some time as well sharing some of the Taiwanese instruments that the Stearns collection does have, and I'll kind of take you on a little tour through the rooms that we have here. We have a bit over 3,000 instruments, and so it's going to be really fun to share these with you. But these instruments are more from the traditional Chinese musical perspective, the erhu, the guzheng, some flutes, the zhao, and things like this. So they are not the traditional Bunun instruments. So my first part will be to talk about 10 Bunun instruments and share some video recordings of those, and then to talk a little bit about Chinese instruments from Taiwan that are in the collection, and then some performances on those instruments featuring some faculty and students from the University of Michigan here. So I hope you enjoy that. And without further ado, I'm going to begin a screen share that will list 10 of these instruments, and this comes from actually this list. Certainly not, again, as I said, kind of primary research of my own, but comes from a book kind of whose goal was to investigate kind of terminology for these instruments and not just giving them either westernized or I guess Chinese Sinicized versions of their names. And so I'm going to begin this screen share now, and it will begin with a list of those instruments and then kind of morph into the recordings, and I'll kind of narrate those as we go. I hope you're able to see this okay. And so now I believe you'll see this list of 10 Bunun musical instruments. And again, the author here is Zhenhao Chenglanqini. This is Native Terminology and Classification of Taiwanese Musical Instruments. You'll see number 5 is either it can be pronounced a hung hung or kung kung, or as Teresa told me today, hung kung, to kind of combine the H and the K sound. So number 5 is the instrument that I just showed you that was presented to the collection. And then number 6, the latuk, was the other one, the musical bow. Lancini, however, begins with a very simple instrument that unfortunately I don't have a photograph for you of, but this is called the mapiquis or the kipapa. This is a percussion stick. It was probably meant primarily kind of for signaling. And actually, this is worth just taking a brief pause to talk about kind of the context of this. It's very interesting, and my thoughts from this come from a book by Jonathan Stock and Chao Shenye, talking about everyday musical life in the Bunun. And like many peoples around the world, music is kind of an inherent part of their life, not necessarily the kind of concert experience that some of us might be used to, or the iPod experience that we also might be used to. But it can be a different experience to tease the kind of context out. And so the things you're going to see today are certainly out of context of how they might have been done. It's kind of featured as little cameo performances. And I just note that kind of really as a disclaimer. Not something that I can readily explain, but I just want to make that clear that I think from what I understand for the Bunun, and it was certainly different for those people 100 years ago as well, without electronic recordings and digital recordings and things like that. So certainly their culture, their musical culture has changed too with the advent of recordings and electronic instruments and such. So again, the first instrument that Lancini notes is this percussion stick. And it's interesting that you can notice two things in those two different names. The first one, the kipapa, hints toward what Lancini says is that many of these instruments, the names are influenced by onomatopoeia. They kind of the words sound like the sounds of the instruments. The first name of that, the mapiquis, may mean to pray to our ancestors. So again, there may be some kind of connections beyond that. The next instrument, number 2, is actually a collection of instruments that are fascinating. These are, again, somewhat onomatopoeic, the dur-dur or the tul-tul, and these are stamping pestles. And you can think of the mortar and pestle, like you might grind spices in. So the pestle is the kind of the heavy stick. And in this case, these pestles are 6, 8 feet high and fantastic. You'll see a group of people in a circle. In one instance, they are pounding them on large stones, and in another, just on a concrete surface. So the different pitches actually come from the size of the pestles, these large stamping pestles themselves. It's interesting also that these were probably used for stamping grain. Millet was the main grain of the Bunun. And so, again, there's a connection between real life and the music. So I'm going to go ahead and play this. It may take a minute to advance. There's also going to be some credit info again. I thank Dr. Tseng-Yu Fen for her videography and production of this. So I find that personally super fascinating and would love to experience that in real life. It must have a certain kind of kinetic energy to feel that the ground shaking there. So a really wonderful thing. Um, the next two instruments I think you can see on the list here. Number 3 is the toklo, the wooden gong. And then number 4, the laklak or somsom, which is a bone rattle. And I don't have anything other than pictures of these. The toklo was likely part of a loom, may have been a kind of hollow wooden part of the loom and ended up being used also as a gong. And the bone rattle, the laklak, the history of there is a little bit unclear, but it seems to have connotations connected with worship or prayer, or also kind of incantations for a good harvest. And again, I'm going on the research of Jianhao Changlanchini here, as noted in that. So here are photos of the toklo and the laklak. So the next thing on the list, the number 5, and again, this was the instrument that I showed you that was donated earlier today. This is the Hong Kong, also known as the jaw harp. And this is a video again from Dr. Tseng Yufan. And I'm going to go about a little bit on a limb here with a kind of to surmise. There's something beautiful about listening to this instrument and also the laduk, the musical bow that you're going to hear after this, that reminds me a little bit of the overtone singing that is part of the Bunun tradition. And the way that in this case the harp is held in the mouth, but also the bow is, you'll see, placed in the mouth, the corner of the mouth, and somehow the shape of the cavity in the mouth influences the sound. And I find something really fascinating in connecting that instrumental sound with the vocal sound. And I can't say anything more than a kind of like musician's intuition on that, but I feel like there's a kind of interesting connection there for those of you who do know the Bunun singing. So I think in this example of the Hong Kong, you will hear actually, I believe, 3 different musicians playing. And I think that I will just allow the video to go ahead then. There will be a little break, and then you will hear, again, the performance of the musical bow. So please enjoy. So I hope you're enjoying this Amazing insight into or examples actually of Bunun music. If you're joining late, you just heard several performances on the jaw harp, and I'm sorry about that. That kind of got ahead of me there. Sorry. Let's go back a little bit here. So what we are listening to were a couple examples of the Hung Kung, the Bunun jaw harp, and then the latuk, or the musical bow, both played held in the mouth and creating really interesting overtones through the manipulation of that space. The next instrument that I want to feature is the Banir Latuk, or Bulingao. And again, these are transliterations, I guess, from the book I mentioned earlier of Lancini, and spellings and pronunciations. I'm certainly not an expert on Bunun pronunciation, and spellings may differ from within various sub-tribes of the group, but this is a zither, in this case of 5 strings. And you'll hear a kind of, this is plucked actually with a kind of a wooden dowel, and you'll hear, I don't know, I don't want to say too much. I think you'll enjoy it. Teresa Chong told me earlier today that this is one of the most popular instruments that you're most likely to hear when visiting the Bunun. So enjoy. The next instrument is the bashia, which is a whistle for hunting. And I don't unfortunately have any videos or pictures of this. I guess this was traditionally for hunting. There's a small deer in that area called the barking deer, or the muntjak, and this whistle is used for that. Again, kind of going back to what I said a few minutes ago, thinking about the context for many of these instruments. For those of you who might be more comfortable in the kind of European concert tradition, this is certainly different. If you're more comfortable in the 2021 digital culture, this is also certainly different than that. This is music that's not only about itself, but connected with daily activities, with communication with others, and so a different kind of context. So again, that's the bashia, which I don't have an example of. The next two, the Tarangat and the Rarangatan, and these names actually, I think, according to Rancini, are actually interchangeable to some degree, whether they're the transverse flute played in the mouth, or either the single or double nose flute, which is a flute. It's quite soft, and again, I think more common in kind of I want to say Polynesian, Austronesian cultures, and the most of the indigenous people of Taiwan are more connected to that Austronesian, certainly language culture, than they are to the Chinese culture, which is to the west of them. So that's there certainly in a different language group, and I think their musical influence is also the same. So the nose flute is popular in that culture, and it's a very soft instrument, very intimate kind of sound. And I was not able to find either images or videos of Bunun musicians. But I did find a photograph of a Pawan musician holding the flute, and then some members of the Amis, I believe it's pronounced Amis or Amis culture, playing this in a performance at a festival. So I'll share both that photo and that video with you, and then that will wrap up this discussion about the 10 instruments of the Bunun musical culture. And at that point, the other instruments of the band come in, and it gets a bit loud. So I'll stop the video at that point. And that'll kind of wrap up the first part of my talk, kind of focused on the Bunun instruments. And again, I'm indebted to the work of other scholars for their primary research on this, and also their field recordings that to be able to share the context of these wonderful sounds. And again, featuring also the two instruments that were donated by Mitai today to the Stearns collection, as I mentioned at the very beginning. So at this point, I'd like to move on and talk a little bit about some of the instruments in the Stearns collection, and to show you some of the instruments that we have. We have a number of instruments from Taiwan, none specifically from the indigenous peoples, but more connected with more recent Han Chinese culture. And I'll show you kind of an outline of our building, of our space here. And you'll forgive me for a sec while I disconnect from my Wi-Fi here, and I hope we won't have any problems with that. Actually, should be just fine. I think I've already got the Wi-Fi going. If there's any problems, I'll be back as soon as possible. So here we go, pulling the plug. That should be fine. And it's going to take a minute for the lights to come on. They're motion activated. But I'm going to take you from our main collections room here, where we do a lot of work, to actually the places where we do keep most of our instruments. And I think, as I said, I think it looks like I'm walking into the dark. And in fact, I am, but I think the lights will come on very soon. They're motion activated, I very much hope. And so the first instrument I'm going to show you is connected often with Chinese opera. It's the drum, the bangku. And here we go. There the lights come on. Great. I knew it was going to happen. And give me a second here to just dodge out of the way and move my camera. But this is the bangku. It's a very high drum. And let me see if I can get out of the way and show it to you a bit better here. And it's kind of the leader in the opera plays this because it's such a strong pitched instrument. My friend Amy Cheng wrote me about the text on here, that it kind of, there's nothing, it's not a poetic thing, but rather just a kind of description of who built the instrument and what it is. You can see this is a kind of natural goat skin that's tacked on. There's a metal supporting kind of rim around it. And then you can see the inside is very strong and solid, just a very small space there for that skin to resonate. So that's one of the Taiwanese instruments. Again, this is the bangku that we have in the Stearns collection. I'm gonna now go on to show you another thing. And I'm actually thinking here that I'm gonna just talk to Emily. I'm just not sure if for the webinar, if my video's spotlighted or highlighted. I'm gonna just be showing you a couple of other drums as we go. The Stearns collection is really an amazing place with an unbelievable amount of instruments. As I kind of do a 180 here, you'll see kind of the range of other instruments we have. We have one of the largest collections of kind of diverse instruments. And I know that's a kind of loaded term, but musical instruments from a wide variety of countries, cultures, and time periods. And we love doing these kind of webinars to kind of talk about the instruments that we have in our collection here. So give me one sec here. This room that I'm in now is what we call the idiophone room, which is about drums and gongs, bells, things where the cavity of the instrument itself resonates. And we're going to go into the room of string instruments, which produce their sound in a different way, and going to feature, I think the first instrument that I'll go to is the pipa. And this is a traditional Chinese instrument, often I think associated actually with the far west and maybe even with Tibet. As I head in that direction, you're now looking at some of our electronic instruments. Down at the end is our theremin. And then I think actually right here, I'll take actually a break before I go on there to show you actually this instrument that you can see there is called a zheng or a chin. And a little bit later, you'll hear a recording of a larger version of this, the guzhong, which is similar in structure. This is a kind of zither instrument with movable bridges that are plucked. And so this is an instrument that is again more in a kind of traditional Chinese style, but was made in Taiwan. That's the zheng or the chin. And now I'm going to go ahead, again, a little farther up the road here. You can now see into the winds room, the aerophone room. But I'm going to come around the corner here, passing by some really interesting guitars. And here you'll see, a number of zither instruments and pianos. And then I'm going to stop for a second, focus on this pipa. And you'll hear this played by my colleague Xiaodong Wei in a kind of collaboration with me playing harpsichord and one of her students playing guzhong. So this instrument often has a completely solid body as compared to many string instruments that have hollow bodies. This one is normally solid. You can see there's some missing frets here and one missing string. That's one of the dilemmas we have, is how much we should repair our instruments, whether to keep them in kind of a pristine or non-pristine historical condition or to repair them. And this one is not yet been elected for repair. So this is a beautiful example of a pipa. You'll see in the video I show, actually, there's an unbelievable carved pipa at the Metropolitan Museum in New York, and I include a photo of that. I'll take just a minute here to show you part of our collection of erhu. These are two-stringed Chinese fiddles, spike fiddles. And again, you'll hear this in performance in just a few minutes. by Xiaodong. One of the cool things I'll note about this, and for those of you who have been to some of our Stearns performances in the past, you'll know that about a year ago I featured some of these recordings again that Xiaodong and I and some of our students made during COVID. When times were especially difficult, we were really happy to be able to play some music together. And Xiaodong even put some gut strings, which are traditional and European instruments, on the erhu. So we have many, many erhu and erhu-like instruments. They actually come from diverse cultures across Asia, around China to the north and south. This is a kind of traditional one with a python skin head, and this spike that connects the pegs to the body actually runs all the way through, why it's called a spike fiddle. And it has two strings, and the bow passes between them. So the sounds you can create with the erhu are really beautiful. You can see here is a much smaller one. This one has monofilament strings, but again with the python head, python skin for the head. And you'll find some with just one string and of a variety of different shapes. But this is kind of our collection of erhu, which are all especially beautiful. I'll also take you briefly to our aerophone room to show you some of the bamboo flutes that we have from Taiwan. As I back up here, I hope no one gets seasick. And I hope you enjoy seeing, actually, you'll see down at the end there kind of sticking out as a new harpsichord that was recently donated to the collection. You can also see kind of in the background there an upright harp piano. And it's hard to see, but an instrument we hope to have restored soon is a table piano, a square table piano by Erard from the early 1800s. So a lot of very, very wonderful instruments here. The flute that we have is called a zhao, and we actually have several of them. They are traditionally made of bamboo and are quite vulnerable to changes of humidity, and they're actually just quite vulnerable in general. They don't always survive that long, so you'll see the ones that we have are cracked. You'll notice as I head into the aerophone room a number of brass instruments. This is where all the brass instruments are kept. We have an incredible variety of trumpets. This is the Armand Guitala, or part of the Armand Guitala collection of trumpets. And now over to more of the wind instruments, and I'll show you a few of these zhao, or at least certainly one zhao. You see some Baroque oboes and bassoons, and one of our reed organs. So this is one of the bamboo flutes. Excuse me one second here. And you can see it has actually a notch here at the end. And again, this is, I can't tell you, the researchers who initially worked on this instrument didn't provide a lot of details, except to say this is a flute from Taiwan. And you can again see that kind of interesting notch in the end of it. So part of our collection from Taiwan. I'm now going to head back to kind of our main collections room now that you've gotten kind of a little survey of the instruments that we have. See here as I go a number of pan flutes and shofar, and there's again the trumpets. Excuse me as I just be a little extra careful here. And what I'm going to play for you when we get back is I think 3 recordings featuring Xiaodong Wei, myself, and several of our students. This was made about a year ago for a lecture that she was giving, and it features many of these instruments that are traditionally associated with Chinese culture. Xiaodong is a master multi-instrumentalist and singer who can play or sing almost anything. It's really amazing what she can do. I'm here back in the main collection room, and then each of these videos will be titled kind of accordingly. And this was kind of a fusion of my specific interests in harpsichord, my specialty, and also both of our interest in improvisation. The last piece that we play on of these recordings actually is completely improvised, and it features the Arhu I mentioned of hers that she used gut strings on. So let's see, I want to just check the Q&A here. Appreciate the nice comment from Angela about the collection from Taiwan. And yeah, we are really excited to have the instruments that we have, but the growing collection and the instruments from the Bunun makes a big difference. And we really look forward to students being able to experience these and broaden their horizons a bit. So very excited about that. If you bear with me for just 1 second here. Just setting up the next video. And each of these, so the first piece is a kind of traditional piece, played again by guzheng, pipa, and harpsichord. For this, Xiaodong taught me the basics of Chinese notation, which was great for me to learn a little bit about that. The second piece you'll hear is a European piece, a kind of transcriptions of a violin sonata by Johann Sebastian Bach, in which Xiaodong plays the violin part and the erhu, and I'm joined by one of my students on Baroque cello. And then the final piece is improvisation for erhu and harpsichord. So I hope you will enjoy. And give me 1 second as I open this up. And here we go. So just a little information about the guzheng itself. So just some images of the pipa here. And I think you're about to see the beautiful one from the Metropolitan Museum that I mentioned. The carving on the back looks like MC Escher stole his ideas for some of his art from this. It's really beautiful. And then this was the notation that Xiaodong and her student used for this piece and that they generously taught me. So. Again, just a little of the little kind of sketch of the Arhu the different parts of the bow and the instrument itself. This is a photo actually of one of our Arahu in the Stearns collection. And I think you'll see in a minute, this is an improvisation that Xiaodong and I did, harpsichord and Arahu. So welcome back. Hope you enjoyed that. Again, to kind of sum up that the last couple of things you heard were more traditional Chinese instruments. This was a part of kind of my narration of, or just showing some of the instruments that we have here in the Stearns collection that came from Taiwan, but were not necessarily connected to the Bunun people. The beginning of my talk was featuring 10 Bunun instruments, and with some videos and some photography of that. And again, that's kind of the heart of tonight's presentation. But I did kind of combine it with some other things that are here in the Stearns collection, and hope you enjoyed this little tour of our collection, at least this part of it. I'd like to conclude at this time by again, and kind of thanking the Ann Arbor District Library, Emily and Tyler, the staff here, for helping out with this. Also, definitely, as I mentioned at the beginning, my friend Amy Situ for setting this up and for her passionate work. I'd like to just take a second again to show the instruments that were donated by Mitai today to the Stearns collection. This is the Hong Kong. In English, we would say a jaw harp, again, in a traditional Bunun frame and built by a Bunun craftsperson. And then the second instrument is the laduk, the musical bow, one of the oldest kinds of instruments in existence. And I've featured this again in recordings from Professor Tseng Yu-fen, Dr. Tseng Yu-fen. Both beautiful instruments, and really glad to show you these two of the newest instruments in the Stearns collection. So this partnership is really meaningful. Great chance for me to grow a bit and learn things that I've never heard before. So it's been my pleasure. I see Emily's back, so maybe Emily,
Yeah.
you've got a question or something you'd like to share.
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, first of all, thank you so much for the talk and for the performances. They're very beautiful. And we have some, I think Tyler is dropping some stuff from the YouTube live stream into the chat.
Great.
So we do have one
Great.
question that I'm not even going to read it. I'm just going to let you read it and
Right.
answer.
Yeah. Right. So I'll read the question out just so people can hear it. So there's a question that was a lovely improvised duo for the low tuned Arhu and harpsichord. She has gut or silk strings on it and tuned down to EB nearly an octave lower than the normal DA tuning, ? And I can't certainly give you the specifics on that, but that question is basically exactly right, that I was not able to provide Xiaodong maybe with the exact kind of gut strings she might expected. I just gave her the ones that I had some extras and I gave them to her, and I think she tuned them kind of to the appropriate amount before they would break, and they sounded good. So I think that's why the Arhu does sound especially low. And you're right, those were gut strings. I think they had come from a Baroque cello, actually. And just as we were chatting one day and talking about this possibility, I initially hoped that she would be able to perform with silk strings, but it turns out those were a bit harder to get than we thought. And I just mentioned, hey, I've got some Baroque cello strings here. Why not try them? And she really, really loved them. And I think just a comment that almost everybody who gets the chance to play on gut strings does fall in love. They're so, in a certain sense, unpredictable. And that might sound like something not fun for a musician, but actually it is. It's something we have to react to, and it's especially warm sometimes or chilly. It's like another person and you have to deal with them, and it makes it really fun for a musician. So that's a great question. I see there's another question actually in the Zoom chat about, are the videos publicly available? I think again, most of the ones that I shared from Dr. Tseng Yufan are available on her YouTube channel. And I think if you give me 1 sec, I can tell you again what that is. She has a lot of amazing videos of Bunun musicians and others as well, certainly. And I think, Emily, the things that I shared are going to be available eventually on the AADL website. Is that right?
Yeah, so we will have this video up later, and certainly if you have links or things that you want to send, just send those on to me, and we can post them on the page for this event.
Great. Okay, perfect. And so I will do that, and eventually those should be available. So great. Emily, any other questions?
So I don't think there are any other questions, but over on YouTube, just a lot of people expressing their appreciation. So Lee says, thank you, Professor Gasha, for giving the talk about the Bunun musical instruments. Amy says, fascinating. Someone whose username is Babu Pilau says, I love a latuk instrument from Bunun. And then there's a person whose username, I think it might be, sorry, I'm not going to be able to pronounce it, D. Badagna. And they actually have a number of informative comments on the musical instruments, and they actually give us the names of those instruments in Chinese, and it seems like they're quite an expert about it. This is the same person who asked the question about the tuning.
Gotcha.
So I can save those for you, so maybe you can have add those to your research at the collection.
Great.
Yeah, so just lots of appreciation from people.
Great. Thanks, Emily. And I'll say, one thing, just as I said at the very beginning, again, that this lecture has been, again, for me, not as a kind of primary scholar. This isn't my area of expertise at all, but certainly a passion of mine that chance to collaborate with Xiaodong was fantastic. And then for me to do research, just to check in about what others have learned about Bunun instruments and their music has been great. So with humility, I present my findings, not from someone who's lived there or walked in those shoes, but someone who has just been able to kind of bring together some of the sources that I found and share them with you as part of this festival.
Okay, well, thank you everybody so much for being with us tonight. Thank you so much, Professor Gasho, for showing us the instruments and the tour of the Stearns collection. I'd always heard about this fabled collection of instruments in a basement somewhere.
Yep. Fortunately,
fortunately
we're not in a basement anymore. We're in a beautiful climate controlled space. So we're at a great space. Unfortunately, we don't do kind of mostly for security reasons. We don't do public tours, but if the moon is at just the right place and you email me, you might be able to get a private tour. So yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Very good.
Thank you
Thanks,
again,
everyone.
everybody. Have a great evening.
Good night.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.